Good evening. It is Monday, December 18th. It is 7:20 p.m. and I call the Maple Plains City Council meeting to order. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill.
I'll second that.
Second by DeLuca. Any discussion or additions? Right. All in favor of adopting the agenda as posted?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item for business is Steve Rose Park Bench proposal.
First of all, just thank you everyone for the opportunity to present this. My name is Corey Hawkinson. Here with me is Pete Ketting. We were both friends with Steve Rose growing up in the Maple Plain community along with Steve, and we are here to request permission for a bench, as you see on the screen, dedicated to Steve. Like I said, Steve Rose grew up in Maple Plain along with us. He was always a great leader for us, an example of us on how a person should live their life. Steve's the son of Kevin and Barb Rose, who still live in Maple Plain. Many of you may know Barb from the Planning Commission. Tragically, Steve's life was cut short at the end of October. Steve was doing something that he loved, which is helping out others. In a snowstorm, he stopped to help out an individual who spun off the road, and another car hit Steve, and unfortunately he passed away. We're asking for this bench as a place of reflection. Steve always had a way in his life of pointing us or anyone else back on the right path. When we would get off, he was such a great listener, and we're looking for this bench as a place to obviously not replace Steve, but a place for people in the community to go and sit down and reflect on their life, and hopefully in the way that Steve helped us get back on the right path. Hopefully the bench is a place for people to take their concerns and get back on the right path as well. We are doing this as somewhat of a surprise to the Rose family. Obviously, as anyone can imagine, they have enough stress in their life right now, and we wanted to do this as a gift to them, and a place for them to sit down and reflect as well. As friends, the two of us as well as 8 others, we have agreed to donate the funds needed to make this bench possible, so we want to be clear that we are not asking for any funds from the city of Maple Plain. And I'd also like to point out that the photo that you see on the screen, which was put together by Jane Hodgins, who is a art teacher at the Orono High School. That is going to go at Bryantwood Park, a place that we grew up playing baseball with Steve at. And the tree that it's next to represents first base in the game that we used to play. So it's a place that it's important to us. It's important to a place for where Steve grew up. And this will also include a plaque. The bench you don't see in the picture, but there will hopefully be a couple extra bushes on the side that we're going to donate as well with this. And it's going to have a plaque that's going to have one of Steve's favorite quotes on it, which was, "Always be yourself. Unless you can be Batman, in that case, be Batman." So we're here, again, we're not asking for funding, but what we are asking for is any logistical support that you guys can provide in making this possible, including any permits, as well as approval to move forward with this. Obviously, it's not going to happen in the winter right now, but when the weather allows, we're looking for approval to move forward. So, again, I thank you, and if anyone has any questions, please let us know.
Thank you, Pete and Corey. Does council have any questions for Pete and Corey? I just want to thank you both for being here, and it sounds like a great way to honor a wonderful man in a park where you were able to make a lot of memories together growing up, and the tree is first base, and sounds great, and we will get you connected with the Park Commission and the right steps, and we will do what we can to make the process as easy as possible and support you in whatever way we can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you again. All right. Next on our agenda, Nick Neaton, the Delno Senior Center. And I apologize if I messed up your last name, Nick.
That's just fine. You did just fine.
Okay.
I'll pull this up for you, Nick.
Okay. Do you have an advancer at all, or a clicker, or? Otherwise, I can
I
tell you to
don't.
switch slides if that works for you.
Might have you to tell me to do that.
Yep, okay. There we go. Hello, City Council members, Administrator. My name is Nick Nathan. I am the Director at the Delano Senior Center. I work for the City of Delano. And I'm happy to be here tonight to tell you a little bit about the Senior Center and what we do in Delano, the services that we provide to Maple Plain. Tonight I've asked, I know there's not a vote on our funding tonight, on the city's funding of the Delano Senior Center, but I asked several of our Maple Plain residents who are regulars at the Senior Center to come and join me just to show you who in your city is using the Senior Center services. So raise your hand if you've been to the Delano Senior Center for a program. Thank you for taking your time tonight and joining us. Let's switch to the first slide, Bobby. I'll tell you this, I'm a program coordinator, a director at the Senior Center. I am not a PowerPoint designer, okay? So forgive me on this, but I'm going to tell some interesting stories that hopefully give you a picture of what we do there. So if you don't know where the Senior Center is, we're right in the City Hall building at Delano, right next to the DMV, City Hall, and the Senior Center, all under one roof. And the Senior Center has been an important place and an important priority for the City of Delano since 1982, when they first opened the Senior Center in the previous location. For a community of our size, 6,000 people in Delano, to have a resource like the Senior Center is something extraordinary. We see most recently people from Waconia, people from Delano, or people from Buffalo coming and saying, wow, you know, they're coming from bigger communities, they don't have senior centers, or they feel like our Senior Center offers much more than what they have available. So it really is something that's great. Just because we're called the Delano Senior Center doesn't mean that that's all we serve. We serve anybody that walks in the door. I don't card anybody when they come in the door of the Senior Center. We're called the Senior Center because we primarily focus on senior citizen programs. However, anybody of any age is welcome to participate in any of our programs. The only thing that we card for really is if you're 60 plus, you get a discount on your lunch. Otherwise, anybody's welcome to come, and we hope that you do. And the lunches are great. Lunches are great. We'll talk about lunches a little more as we go on. You see a 1951 high school class reunion. They meet at the Senior Center a few times a year to get together. So it really is a social spot, a gathering place. It's a place to catch up on what's happening. It's a place for people to meet friends. Many of our seniors live alone. And so this is a community place to come, to be with others, and to catch up, of course, on the latest news. Just some stats sprinkled throughout this. We had just short of 1,000 social or recreational events in 2016. We're open Monday through Friday, regular business hours. So we have lots of time to program for things. We have the space, and we have thanks to funding from Maple Plain, along with other communities, we have good funding as well to continue programs. Okay, it's a place of continued learning. We work with Delano Community Ed, particularly in the adult enrichment aspect of community life. So we're hosting seminars on Barnes of Minnesota, interesting speakers on history topics. Of course, we do things with AARP. Comes in, they did brain games with us a little while ago. We talk about what are the latest scams that seniors are facing. We've had presenters on, armchair travel to New Zealand, the great white pine fires of the 1800s, anything interesting. Doug Oman is a photographer that wrote that book, Barnes of Minnesota. Doug's been coming to the Senior Center for many years, talking and giving people something to look forward to, something to learn, and something to feel connected to. So we continue to do that. Perhaps most of all, we're a community resource and information center. Taxes, believe it or not, are right around the corner, right after Christmas. And this year, so the last tax season, we served just over 200 different individuals participated in AARP Tax Aid. So we're a host site for that. I've started to get calls already. When's tax sign up? When can I sign up for taxes? That's a volunteer-led program that we host and really does a big service for a lot of people. We're also wrapping up Medicare enrollment, and we do a lot of referrals to Medicare. That can be confusing, especially for people that are brand new to Medicare or are changing plans. We can do referrals to Medicare to make sure they know what their options are, and more so, they're receiving information from an independent third party that doesn't have an interest or is trying to sell them anything. So that's good. We're seeing more and more demand for that, as well as we get a lot of calls from people that say, hey, my mom and dad, who are seniors, just moved to Delano, and they came here from the cities. They came here from Minneapolis, and they don't know anybody out here. They don't know where to get assistance for X, Y, or Z. How can they get involved? Okay, we're seeing more of that. Like Maple Plain, Delano is growing. Perhaps more. We have more space there to build, but we're growing more and more, and we're seeing more grandmas and grandpas moving out to be close to their children. So those people need to be involved too. So that's where we can. That's where we can be. We estimate, and that's an estimate, I would say conservative, 17,000 plus requests for information in 2016 that we helped fill. Okay, go ahead. We mentioned food. We serve a hot meal every day at noon. We're a Catholic Charities senior dining site. So every weekday at noon, you can come to the senior center regardless of who you are or how old you are or where you live, and you can get a hot, nutritious, balanced meal prepared by a trained cook and dietitian. That's pretty cool. If you're 60 plus, that meal is a donation basis. It's an anonymous donation. Nobody's turned away for their inability to pay. Now, most people will go there and say it's a $4 meal, and that's the suggested contribution. But really, it's a sliding scale for whatever you can pay. If you're younger than 60, you're still welcome to join us, and we do have those people join us, often with friends. But we have to charge a fee of $7.75 for that. But on an average day, this is kind of off the cuff, we serve about 25 people in-house. And we also send out Meals on Wheels to about 25 people. We serve Delano, we'll serve Independence. We currently do not serve Maple Plain because of overlap with other homebound meal services. We traditionally serve what is the St. Cloud Diocese area, but it goes into Loretto and Loretto and Independence as well, and Rockford. If somebody calls from Maple Plain wondering where can I get Meals on Wheels served to me at home, we can help refer them to the right agency that serves this part of the metro. See, Maple Plain and Delano are really close together geographically, but there's that tricky little line in between us that causes a lot of issues sometimes, that the county line I'm talking about, of course. So we try to do our best. It affects transportation as well. I'll talk more about transportation in a minute. But Catholic Charities, senior dining, a great meal. Come and check us out sometime for lunch. Mention transportation. We own a bus, and our bus is on the road all the time. We're always going places. In past years, we worked with the Met Council to actually pick up residents of Maple Plain, bring them to the senior center for lunch, and then bring them back afterwards. Funding for that was eliminated during the recession years. The biggest way we serve Maple Plain residents right now is we will stop many of our trips that we plan, our day trips shopping, or our trips we go to plays, we go to restaurants, we go to museums, lots of different things throughout the year. Many of them are going down to the metro. We stop in Maple Plain and pick up people all the time. Usually use the MPFC parking lot, or we pick them up at their homes. And they can hop on the bus here. It's convenient for them. It's a way for seniors in Maple Plain to stay active and stay engaged in activities. So last year we served about 2,901 trips to 250 plus individuals. That's not just Maple Plain, but that's our total service area. Okay, Bobby? And most of all, it's a place to serve and help out. We know that many seniors have free time, and it's our job to help make sure that they feel like they're engaged and that they are working towards something. Last year we had 231 volunteers, estimated about 7,500 hours, helping out with different aspects of the senior center's programs. Our receptionist, if you call the senior center, most times you get the volunteer receptionist. When I first started at the senior center about 3-4 years ago, I thought, wow, there's a volunteer receptionist there every day. Yeah, we have our Monday person, our Tuesday person, our Wednesday person, and they show up and they're dedicated. If they can't make it, they line their own sub up. It's pretty cool how they take ownership of the role and what the senior center really means to them. Besides that, the Meals on Wheels I mentioned, all delivered by volunteers. They're prepped in the kitchen. We have a cook that is on staff, but there are volunteers in the kitchen every day helping to prep the meals, helping to wash the dishes, serve the meals. And then, of course, we have many different projects throughout the year that require volunteers. Our Christmas party, for example, on Wednesday, we'll have 80 or 90 people eating with us, and you know the place is going to look really nice too, thanks to the volunteers that are decorating for it and helping serve the meals. So it's a volunteer place. Now, talking a little bit about funding. Our funding partners, we work with many of the different cities around the area. City of Delano, of course, is our #1 funder, but we also work with Rockford, Loretto, Maple Plain, Independence, and Franklin Township. Franklin Township didn't have a logo. That's why that's blank. Our other funders include the Delano-Loretto Area United Way, Catholic Charities Senior Dining. I forgot to put Delano Public Schools up there. Delano Public Schools and Community Ed, as I mentioned, provide some funding to the senior center. And then we also rely on a lot of private donations and user fees as well, because our services are not free, but we do try to keep them low cost and affordable, because that is the audience that we're working with. Okay. So you might ask, what does the senior center offer to Maple Plain residents? I've gone through a lot of these already. I'll breeze through them. The dining site, the pickup here for shopping trips and recreation trips, the referrals for senior services, kind of with a personal touch rather than calling a state agency or a national hotline or a statewide hotline. We can help guide them to the services that they need. The in-house presentations that we offer. Okay, Bobby, next slide. Social opportunities. Forgot to mention, we have all different types of clubs. In fact, a lot of Maple Plain people here tonight are from our card clubs that meet. Some afternoons we'll have 30, 40, maybe even 50 people playing cards of one sort or another inside the senior center. We have a writers group, we have a book club, we have a choir, coffee. If somebody comes in and says, I want to start an XYZ club, we say, how can we help make that start for you? The volunteer opportunities, the exercise classes that we offer, and the tax aid, among many other programs. The funding request we have for 2017 is $4,433. That is a 3% increase from 2016. That's kind of been our standard when working with our partners, is recognizing that the cost of the costs rise each year, so we anticipate a 3% increase each year. That's what we ask for. We've worked with Maple Plain since at least 2008. Around this level of, we were higher, 2008, 2009, just a little bit higher, more towards $5,000. And then with the recession, it looks like it came down some more into the high 3,000s. And so now we're back up to about 4,500. That's the funding request that we've asked for this year. I hope I've given you some information about the senior center. Would welcome any of you to come and check it out sometime. Are there any questions I can answer about the Delano Senior Center?
Any questions for Nick? Not at this time. Thank you so much for your presentation and for being here tonight and for the work you're doing.
You bet. We hope to see you sometime, and thank you to all my friends that came and sat in tonight. We appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next item of business is our consent agenda, which includes accounts payable, city council minutes from November 27th, workshop, city council minutes from our November 27th meeting, and park commission minutes from our October 16th meeting. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Broda,
Second.
second by Cahill. Any discussion?
Mayor, can I pull A for 4 quick questions?
Okay.
Accounts payable?
Yes, we will pull accounts payable. Any further discussion? Looking to approve the consent agenda with the 3 sets of minutes.
So
All in
moved.
favor?
Oh, I'm sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Well, we will talk about accounts payable. Councilmember Fay.
Bobby,
Yes.
DCP Industries, are we seeing a noticeable uptick in chemicals because of the bringing online well 4?
Well, yeah, there's an increase because you have to treat two different types of water. Both wells, even though they are close, they're two separate aquifers. So you do have to treat them a little differently. That's why there's an uptick in
I figured so
chemicals
much.
there.
And then I've also been noticing these $10 and $20 fees from this DCP, and we discussed that last spring because one of your chemical companies was charging us demurrage or rental or something along that line. Are they passing those fees back on to us again?
Yeah, I'll have to look at it. I know that DPC Industries too, we used to have a different chemical company. When that conversation came up, we switched within the last 6 months or so.
Right. And these $10
we had
and $20
Hawkins.
fees are coming back.
Yeah, so I'll have to look at that and see if we can address that if that's the case.
Okay. General service, how come Public Works didn't winterize the park?
I think some of that is blowing out the lines on like the baseball field.
Got it. We paid Pearson Brothers $32,000 in September,
Correct.
and now we've got additional
Yeah, this is
road overlay?
yeah, this is some striping that was done on Bud Avenue and the two turn signals that you see up there. And the striping that they did, they had to come back and do that as part of we had them do that as part of the street reconstruction project. That striping was added in there, I believe.
So that's part of Bud Avenue,
Correct.
okay. And safety train, 2018 training, $950, what's that?
Just 1 second.
Right below Pearson.
I'll have to look exactly in that. I know that our Public Works has to do annual safety training stuff, and that might be the annual cost of doing that safety training. I'll have to look at that one.
That's all I had.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. With that, looking for a motion to approve the accounts payable.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill. Second. Second by DeLuca. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving accounts payable signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, accounts payable are approved. We do not have any administrative reports this month. At this time, I am looking for a motion to open the public hearing regarding the neighborhood feasibility study feedback.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill,
Second.
second by Broda, and the public hearing is open, and I'm going to turn it over to our city engineer, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and the public. So we'll run through the PowerPoint, so hopefully people can see that, and then we'll, at the end of it, we'll open it up to questions. And I think as the council has in the past, we'll come up to the mic and give your name and address. So once again, this is the public hearing for the 2018 street and utility improvements. Tonight I'm going to review there was a neighborhood meeting that was held with the public on a very cold day in October. So we're going to talk about that. We'll review the feasibility report. We'll discuss estimated costs, financing, and schedule. We'll get feedback from the public and council. And at the end of the evening, or at the end of closing the public hearing, if the council decides, they would approve a resolution for preparation of plans and specifications. So we did meet on October 13th, 2017. There was plus or minus 18 residents that came. Could you speak up a little bit so everyone can hear? Sure. Maybe if I speak closer, does that help? Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry about that. And thank you for stopping me. The various items that we talked about, some of the main items were the drainage issues at 1645 Howard, also the southeast corner of Howard and Independence. There's some rear yard drainage issue between Howard and Perkins Lanes that we talked about. There was some discussion on the street widths along Howard. I think the residents were in favor of keeping the street widths very similar to what they are now. In general, the minimum street width the city is doing is around 26 feet. So it would be just slightly larger than what the existing is now. And that usually means parking on one side of the street if it's 26 feet. There's some discussion on buried power lines. The city has looked at that in the past, and it is very expensive to bury power lines along residential properties, and also property owners have to convert, make some conversion between the buried power and their control panels and et cetera. We also talked about type of curb and sidewalk, and I think people on Howard had felt that, you know, there was no need for sidewalk. There was some discussion on Independence with the street width and a possible bike trail. So those were some of the various issues that were brought up at the neighborhood meeting, and we kind of included some of those discussions in the feasibility report itself. So the project location, once again, is on Howard Avenue from Main Street east to Drake Street. So going all the way down to at the south end Main Street east, and then north up to Drake Street. On Independence, the east end, it would be from Baker Park Road, and the west end from Howard Avenue. So that's the proposed project streets. Sanitary sewer, in general, the sanitary sewer is existing clay sewer pipe that was put in the 1950s. The city has experienced a variety of different I&I in the old clay pipe, and so whenever we're reconstructing a street, the city will replace that clay pipe with PVC, the PVC plastic pipe, and they do some lining of sewer, the clay pipe in some places, and there is a stretch here that we show right a little bit to the east of Perkins that when Public Services was reviewing that, they felt that clay pipe could work with just lining. So that is an option for the project. The water main is existing 6-inch cast iron that was put in plus or minus in 1939 in various areas. There's some records that aren't clear, so there could be some water main that is a little newer than that, but in general the cast iron pipe does have breaks and corrosion in it. The soils in Maple Plain tend to eat away at the older pipe, and so that's where they've been replacing it when we reconstruct a street with PVC water lines also. What we'd be proposing here is an 8-inch PVC line, as well as new copper services from the main in the street to the right-of-way. Whenever we replace water main, we have to put in, when they're taking it out of service, we have to run some temporary water to keep people operating during the summer and fall when they're doing the construction. So we just want to bring that up to the public that there usually is a temporary water that's run along the project, usually outside of where they're going to be digging, that would have to connect into an outside spigot during construction. Street and storm sewer improvements, in general, there's poor street conditions and drainage issues. What's proposed in the project is that storm sewer would be placed as well as drain tile along the curb and gutter that would be placed on the project. And we'd also at driveways put in concrete driveway aprons. It'd be similar to what you've seen in Main and Rainbow and along Bud. So some of the streets that have been recently constructed, you'd see a similar look. I know there was that discussion on the curb and gutter, and that's something the council will kind of discuss, whether there's this surmountable curb and gutter, which is kind of what you see in new developments where they don't know where the driveways are and people just pull up over that and get into your driveway. There is the option when we know where driveways are on a existing neighborhood, you can actually put the higher type curb and then drop it down at driveways for those entrances. And so I think that's one of the residents on Howard had just expressed that they'd prefer to have the taller, the barrier type curb than surmountable. And I think the council in the past has looked at both, and they've, especially when it's a narrower width, they felt that people, as they pull up off to this, and park on the street, they can, with the surmountable curb, you can pull up onto that and get just a little more room. With a barrier type curb, you definitely feel that when you pull up on the side, and you usually don't drive over that barrier type curb. This kind of shows some of the street improvements and some of the proposed storm sewer. When we get into design, if the city proceeds with this project, that's when we detail the storm sewer in more detail. We do note on this drawing the existing drain tile catch basin that's right between properties at 1735, 1719 Perkins Lane, and on the backside of 1730, 1718 Howard. And that drain tile, I recall the council or staff had meetings with property owners along Perkins and Howard a few years ago, and there was this drain tile that had a catch basin back behind the yards, and it went to the east to Perkins Lane and then headed south. And I think there was some property owner that was working on a driveway and might have cut the drain tile. And we know when there was some of those storm events when things aren't draining and you just have this little small drain tile, that was definitely a concern for the property owners. And we've talked about it in the feasibility report and with the council, and they'll make some final decisions as we if they proceed with the project. But right now it just seems like that existing drain tile goes to Perkins, and it's a shorter distance. And when the council looks at doing Perkins Lane, is what we were anticipating at this time is when we would run catch basins to the backyards and pick up that backyard drainage. And that's something the public can comment on and give feedback to the council tonight on that issue. The street improvements, this shows just a typical, like a cross section of the street, but in general there is fabric and sand that's put down because of the clay soils in Maple Plain. Then there's asphalt and gravel that's put above that. We do put drain tile behind the curb and with a stub for sumps, so that if people have a sump pump that pumps out to the street with a hose, you could bury that hose and tie into that stub that's provided at the drain tile. The width of the street is right now what we're proposing is that 26-foot wide street on Howard. But in looking at Independence, we have two options. One where you build it the same width that it, or close to the same width that it is now, a 26-foot wide street, or you can increase the width up to 32 feet. And that gives a little more room for parking on both sides. That's a standard width that many cities use when they allow parking on both sides, a 32-foot width. There is some discussion, I'll get on one of the other slides, about whether a bike lane or sidewalk would be added along Independence. Here's the estimated cost, and this is based on just making Independence a narrower street, and so that's $2,029,100 for the various sewer, water, storm, and street. We did give the council a variety of different options, some related to lining the sewer or replacing it, and those are listed there. If you do line the sewer, which from an engineering standpoint we feel it does give you, they've made improvements on lining over the years, and it does give you equivalent life as replacing it. But there are some times when what we anticipate on this project, if it proceeds, will bid both options, and then the council can make a final decision after seeing what the costs are on lining or replacing that stretch of sewer. But option 3 and 4 is what the cost would be. Option 3, I guess, mainly to concentrate on if we actually widened out Independence Street up to that 32 feet width. And so you can see that adds around $66,500 to a project, but it does provide more room for parking, more room for just that stretch of road. The city reviews costs on a project with their financial consultant, and they give feedback on the amount of bonding, how much might come from utility funds or assessments. We have, I think the staff did send out a preliminary assessment roll to property owners, and that's based on sanitary and water main costs are done on a per parcel basis, street and storm sewer on an adjusted front foot basis, and it's assuming we come up with these total costs and we say, okay, if 35% is assessed and the city pays the remaining 65% of those costs, the estimated preliminary assessments would range between $8,524 for one of the lots that is maybe a smaller width, up to $29,455.77 for the largest adjusted front foot parcel. And so the council does know that those are are expensive costs. And so one of the process that the council does, and we have this formula that gives us these numbers. What the council does is, and maybe before I get that, some of the other preliminary assessment items is it's usually over a 10-year or 20-year period. I think the last few projects have been over 20 years. The interest on an assessment is usually whatever they sell their bonds for. They add a certain percentage for administration to that, and that's what's charged to the public. And if this project would proceed for construction in 2018, the first payment would come due in 2019. But what I was getting to, and we had a bunch of notes on the preliminary assessment roll that was sent out to the public, is that the city does a special benefit analysis that kind of looks and says, okay, here's the proposed improvements that the city is proposing to do. Here's the costs that the engineer is estimating. But an appraiser will come in and look at certain properties and say, okay, yeah, this is what you, this is what benefit this provides to that property with these proposed improvements. And I think that's where the city on the last two projects, the one that they did on Main and Rainbow and the one recently on Bud, they get that information and then they make adjustments on what the formula is saying as the benefit to the property owners. And I know it was a little bit different on Bud because there's some commercial properties versus just residential. Here we have all residential properties, so we anticipate that special benefit analysis will be pretty consistent and give us some good information to make decisions on. And the council doesn't do a final assessment until usually in the fall of 2018. They'll have another assessment hearing, and we'll have costs that come in from the construction. And a lot of times we try to be conservative in these feasibility studies, so we anticipate the cost will come in less than what we anticipated, but that doesn't happen 100% of the time. There's some times when, for certain reasons, those costs can change. But I think what the city tries to do on these projects is get the project out, bid early in the season, in the bidding season, during the the winter months, and we'll kind of show you a schedule of when we would look at bidding the project to try to when contractors are looking for work, sometimes as you wait to get closer to the summer, people have filled up their work, and then that's usually when we see higher prices on construction projects. One of the things we had on there is it was talked about at the staff level, and we had some brief discussions on, is would walk be added to Independence Street, and we did an estimate of that at $66,300. The next slide kind of shows this walking and biking study that was done a few years ago in Maple Plain, and what the biking and walking study was recommending for Independence all the way from Bud Avenue to Baker Park Road was having a sidewalk placed with a bike lane and an urban section. And what the bike lane is that outer 5 feet of the street actually acts as a bike lane, and you do not park on that. You kind of leave that for bikes, and the city discussed that in the past on the stretch, especially in front of the school, and decided at that time not to do any temporary bike lane. But as soon as we start reconstructing that stretch from Howard to Baker Park Road, the issue of should a sidewalk be placed? What we anticipate, the sidewalk would be placed very right next to the curb in that area, just because of some of the trees and slopes on some of the properties. But is a bike lane something that the council wants to consider? And so I think giving some of your feedback there tonight on the sidewalk and the bike lane, the best location for a sidewalk in that stretch, just based on where all the utility poles would be, the north side. So people on the north side of the road of Independence from Howard to Baker Park Road, that would be, from an engineering standpoint at this time, would be the best location for a sidewalk. Here's the schedule that I was briefly talked about before, and the schedule is the public hearing tonight. If after the public hearing is closed and the council discusses the project, if they want to proceed with the city engineer preparing plans and specs, that can be done tonight. There's a resolution in their packet. We would plan to bring back plans and specifications to the February 26th meeting for reviewing and approving. And the council has at times in the past, we've had some meetings in between that. If the public is interested, we can show them the plans and get any questions on their specific properties answered. If you approve the plans February 26th, you would open bids and award the contract in March, and that's similar to what the city has done on some of their last few projects and has gotten some really good bids on that. Construction would begin as soon as May, and we'd complete construction in late August and September. We always wait a year after a street is reconstructed because there could be some settlements with our clay. We wait to put the final lift of bituminous on until the following year, and so you're kind of left with the curb and gutter and one lift of asphalt, and the final lift goes on the following spring of 2019. And I think that's been a lot of talking by your city engineer, and we certainly open it up to the public at this point in time, and I'll turn it back to the mayor and council.
At this time, if you'd like to come forward and speak, you may go to the microphone. You need to state your name and address, please, and it will be limited to 3 minutes.
Mayor, City Council, Adam Gabois. I live at 4900 Independence Street. I was just curious what the front foot assessment rate was on previous projects compared to this one.
I don't have that right in front of me. I know we use prices from past projects, and then we increase them for a little bit for inflation. So I would say if we built a narrower street, we didn't build a wider street on the last projects. So I'd say the costs are going to be higher, at least in this feasibility report, because costs have went up a little bit for inflation. I think the question that the council will discuss, and which can affect some of those front foot costs, is if we construct a street to 32 feet wide, are we gonna, are those property owners just gonna be assessed for a 26-foot wide street, just like on Howard, and is the city gonna pick up maybe the increase in that width because it's maybe a more traveled road, etc. So I think right now I don't have those numbers, but that's something we could get for the council, and what the per adjusted foot was on past projects. And what actually then ended up happening is even though we come up with this number on the adjusted front foot, they do that special benefit analysis, and then it's kind of like capped then at, so we might say that a property had a price of this dollar amount, but the cap is less than that, and so then it's like we don't really even look at that final adjusted front footage after the special benefit is done. But we definitely could look at that and get some of that information out to the public.
And then I just had one more comment. I'm on the north side of Independence. I would be opposed to the sidewalk, and then to the street widening too. I'd keep the thinner street. Okay, thank you.
And just real quickly, I just want to make the comment to everybody here tonight regarding this issue.
Closer to your microphone, please.
Sorry about that. One point I do want to make to everyone here in the audience is that it's very understandable getting a letter that says this is what your assessment amount is going to be. That's a giant red flag, and I understand that. And I want to share with the residents at this time that yes, there is those numbers weren't just made up, but we need to gather data yet as the city, and that's where the special benefit analysis comes into play. And that really helps determine what that assessment number is. So that's not to say, I mean, that number could go down. I mean, there is no, it's not in concrete, this number. So I just want to let everyone know that we're still gathering data. This was an initial number sent out there. There's certainly going to be an assessment with this kind of a project, but just the number that you got, that's not in concrete in any stretch. So I just want to share that with everyone. I know that's alarming, but we're still gathering data.
John Shelp. I live at 1666 Howard, and I'm not super prepared. I just wanted to come and get information. And I just wanted to jump in because I think that's what I felt, and I think that's what a lot of people felt, is they just went, what? My daughter started bawling. My 8-year-old just started bawling when I read the number. She didn't know what we were talking about, but she started bawling. So I want you to know that it's pretty alarming to some people. We know it needs to be done. That's not the problem. I have a couple of questions. One is the process, because I'm not super familiar with some of the processes that go on in government. I'm just not. One would be when you're talking about approving things, like, you know, your list of approving things, is that you approving it? Is that a consensus from the streets of the neighborhoods? Is this a done deal and you guys are going to kind of just approve it as you go? That's one question.
When it comes to that, City Council is the approving authority for the City of Maple Plain. So the City Council does take these steps and does have the authority to obviously approve anything that comes forward. It doesn't mean that that's a decision that's taken lightly. There's a lot of data and a lot of information that we need to present in order for City Council to make that decision. All information on any decision that is approved by City Council is public. It's on our city website in all of our packets. And that's always published before the weekend of a meeting. So that's always available any Saturday, Sunday, and all day Monday before a Monday evening meeting. But you're correct. City Council does have that authority to make the decision, but it's very important, like tonight, that we have these public hearings because we need to get feedback from the residents that live. Obviously, everyone here that lives along Howard and Independence, part of the project.
Great. And then the other thing was, I guess I have one more question and a comment, and I want to keep it to my 3 minutes. Are there any, in your kind of your special assessments or whatever you guys are talking about here, are there any programs or anything? My household can probably take this cost, but it's going to sting. I feel like there are some people in my neighborhood, on my street, that are really, really worried that they can't make this cost. What happens to them? That's I don't know. Is there a way people can apply for special help? Is there something? I just feel like some people are feeling they may have to move because of this, and that I think that would be pretty awful, and I think against what the goal of this improvement is.
Sure.
So I'm just curious. I mean, once again, we all have to get more information, and we're not here to burn down the building. I'm just curious about that. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, there's two things. Again, I understand the concern over the number, and all of you guys got that. And I knew that this would be a shock, but it's also on our part. We got to let you know this is coming, even though we don't have the exact number. I want to make sure, and so does City Council, that everyone's aware an assessment comes with a project like this. But it's important to know that that'll get defined during our benefit study. We also have we've done a deferred assessment program, and there's criteria to do that. Not everyone would be eligible for that from previous projects that we've done. That would provide some help, obviously, in deferring the assessment for later on down the road. But that's available. The criteria was one thing for Bud Avenue, and there's state statute that kind of lines out what you need to qualify for a deferred assessment. And we'll get into those details as well. Everyone will have that option from state statute to proceed that way. So.
Great, thank you. And no sidewalk in the same width of street. Thanks.
Hello, Tammy Wenz, 4869 Independence Street. Couple of questions. One, I don't remember what meeting I was at, but the county was talking about doing a bike trail that's connecting to the south up to Baker Park, which, when you're talking about another bike trail, would seem like a conflict. Have you talked to them about their plans so that you're not duplicating plans?
Yeah, I think when we were talking at the staff, and I'll pull that map up, you can see on Main Street East, there's a arrow that. Sure, sorry about that. I'm used to talking close. I don't know why I'm talking so far away tonight, so sorry about that. But there is an arrow that shows the entrance into Baker Park Road coming off of Main Street East, and there are these, various options that I think the county as well as the Three Rivers Park is looking at bike routes. And so I think from a staff level, when we were talking about the bike lane that's talked about in the city study on Independence, we said, well, there is that bike lane that's being shown for Main Street East that goes directly into the park. And so from a staff level, we knew there was that discussion and there was that effort put into Independence as a possible bike lane. I think we feel just more strongly if there is something, is a bike lane needed there because of Main Street East, or is a sidewalk? And we just know there's various entrances. Whenever you reconstruct a street, that's the time to talk about sidewalks or not. And that seems more, at least Bobby, from my standpoint, from discussing at a staff level, that bike lane versus a sidewalk, it just seems like the sidewalk is something that definitely should be discussed and considered. But a bike lane, yeah, it is. I think there are options other than Independence for bike lanes.
Thank you. And so my comment would be to keep Independence at 26 feet. I don't think we need a sidewalk or a bike trail when you have Main Street, which is already a wide road. I mean, I think you're kind of duplicating the road. They're parallel roads very close together, so you're kind of duplicating that. I also wanted to just ask two quick questions. Interest rate on West Main, what was their final number for the interest rate and then the amount that they paid? I don't think it was the 35%, so I was just curious if you have those numbers.
Yeah, I know Main Street, that project was assessed very close to 35%. I know that the interest rate off the top of my head, I don't know. I know for Bud Avenue, I think it was 3.5% was what we had on our last project that we did last year. But Main Street East Main Street West when we did that project was very close, if not right on 35%.
Okay, I heard differently, so I was curious about that. So, okay, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Jim Evavold, and hope it's okay. I'm speaking for my mother over here, Artis, lives on Baker Park Road in Independence, and so hope it's okay. But I grew up there, went to school here. Got caught, in fact, stealing a quarter down here with age 8. But anyway, wondering if you could, my mother's is the 28,000 assessment, and wondering if you could tell her why you're doing this and then the benefit that she would get for 28,000. And just by the way, we've got to struggle for her to get this if it goes through. But
sure. Well, I think the first thing is that, like I said before, I don't think it's productive tonight to say my assessment is X. Why is it X? Just because we don't have the data in terms of our special benefit analysis. So a good question to ask is, what is the special benefit analysis? Why is this important? And why that's important is we actually have a assessor, a land appraiser, come out and look at multiple properties and determine, okay, if a new street was reconstructed, the project that we're looking to do and the new utilities, what benefit in terms of market value does that add to the property? And that's kind of our line that we go by. It is a state statute. It's illegal for a city to assess a higher number than the benefit that we would provide in market value to a property. So that's just something to keep in mind in terms of we have to follow state statute as well. We can't just pick numbers and come up with high assessment numbers to give out to people, there has to be a benefit, a correlation to a property for that assessment. So specifically to one property, it's just not the time yet. There will be a time once we gather more information with our special benefit analysis to then say, okay, how did we get to this number? Just at this time, we're not there yet. We need that information yet.
When that happens, will there be a vote or another meeting like this then?
Oh yes, there'll be